Hey guys, Feuerrm here, and today I'm going to be testing the Mazda Furai in multiplayer in Asphalt 9. This is one of the 5 cars that I got in the Rimac special event, and the 4th one that I am testing. The last one will be the Rimac, so I have completely maxed it out, except for the Epics, which I do not have any of, and this is, in fact, pretty much the new D-Class King. I'm pretty sure the TVR Griffith can still beat it on some tracks, but for most people, this is going to be the one that they will have. Although there is a TVR Griffith car hunt going on right now, so maybe we'll see some interesting competition in the weekly championships. If there is anyone who has waited to go through the Drive Syndicate event, one piece of advice that I would give you is do not 4-star the Furai right away. I know that's tempting because it is a King of D-Class and it is useful, but you will most likely not have enough Drive Syndicate coins to get through the event completely if you try to do that. However, once you get to the end and get the Rimac, you should have some left over to 4-star this car then, and that is what I did, and I believe that is the best way to get through it, because all of the 5 cars in the event you need at 3 stars exactly to get through it. Now, it is technically possible to get through the entire event without unlocking the Rimac, but then you'd have to do a bunch of Hazard 1 missions, and that would just take way too long, and I honestly would not recommend it. So, what is the Furai like, and how does it do in multiplayer? So, at max it can go 197 miles per hour, perhaps a bit more with the top speed epic, but most people will not have that yet. Its drifting is not very good, its acceleration, however, is one of the best in Class D, and its handling and nitro are both okay. Now, I know that doesn't sound especially appealing, especially since the Hemi does have better nitro efficiency, but you do have to keep in mind the 2 most important traits of a car in Asphalt 9, generally speaking, are the top speed and the acceleration. And this car has both of those better than the Hemi, and so is really better than it on most tracks. Now, the Hemi is still fairly competitive against it, and we do have the 911 Targa and the TVR Griffith that are faster and could be better on higher top speed tracks. But this is, like I said earlier, the one that the majority of people are going to end up using for D-Class events. Its multiplayer performance is decent for a D-Class car, however, perhaps not the best. It would do a little bit better if it had better nitro efficiency to be able to keep up that top speed a bit better, but I used it for a few races in Silver League and many races in Gold League, which I will show you in this video, and it did pretty well against a lot of C and even B-Class cars. So yes, it's a decent car for multiplayer. If you have managed to max it, it might be worth taking it out in there and giving that a shot. As in the first race, in this one we are facing a bunch of mostly C-Class cars, with one Pininfarina being the car directly ahead of us, as well as having a Pininfarina, an Acura, and a Mercedes-AMG GTS behind us. One reason that this car can actually do so well against C-Class cars is it's only slower by about 10 to 15 miles per hour than cars like the Pininfarina and the Acura, for example, and so if you drive well, you can probably keep up with them quite nicely. Here we come in pretty close behind this Pininfarina, but we do beat another one as well as an Acura. Now, this next race here is on Osaka, and this car is not especially tuned for Osaka due to not having especially great nitro efficiency. However, this car's good acceleration is what really saves it and makes it actually a viable opponent, because it gets up to speed better than, well, a lot of cars in D, C, and B class actually, and so once I got to Gold League, I was still managing to out-accelerate a lot of the higher cars. And this you will see a bit later in the video. Now, in that previous race, we got pretty close to reaching Gold League, and I knew if I could come in first in this one and go up 36 rating, I would most likely be able to make it there. Unfortunately, I had a little problem going into this tunnel down here, and there was somebody who started catching up, well, very, very close to me, as you can see here. I was afraid he was going to knock me down or something, but thankfully, although he did actually bump me multiple times, that one right there, ironically, just made me go ahead more. And that's generally what happens if somebody bumps you from behind and they're not in nitro. They just give you a huge acceleration boost and it slows them down. It's nice to be on the receiving end of that, not so nice to be on the giving side of that, and I have been in both cases. I was very afraid with that Pininfarina's higher speed and just generally better handling that he would be able to catch up to me through that twisty section back there, but thankfully he fell behind by quite a bit, and thus we were able to shockwave up this ramp near the end and come in first place. Beating also 2 other Pininfarinas, 2 Acuras, a Maserati Alfieri, and a Lancer, who didn't actually come in last. The Alfieri came in last. Very interesting turn of events there. But we did get to Gold League in this race, and so all of the races after this in the video were in Gold League against a bunch of B-Class cars. And in this next one, we were up against multiple Apollo Ns, a Huracan, and 2 Grand Grand Sports, and we are on a track that is quite well suited overall to more agile cars. Oh dear, but we did get ahead in the beginning because this car has good acceleration. Really, that is the only thing that allows it to do as well in multiplayer as it does. And so we get ahead at the beginning of the race, but then I proceed to drive terribly for a few seconds and smack right into the truck for no reason. Gosh, I hate that truck so much. So now we are into 4 out of 7 position. And I wasn't gonna quit, obviously. I did quit a few times in the season when, like, I got knocked down near the very beginning and I was 7 out of 7 and there were a bunch of Apollo N's, like, 20 seconds ahead of me. There's no way I was gonna beat that. But in races like these, where it was at least somewhat close still, I figured I could probably pull something off, you know. Here I was aiming for 2nd position because the number 1 guy was so far ahead, and I figured that with good driving I might be able to pass the number 2 and 3 guys. But then after I went up this barrel, I landed really close to this Corvette and Apollo N, managed to pass the Corvette on one side, then pass the Apollo N on the other side to get into 2nd place. Meanwhile, the 1st place guy had taken a route over to the right, who was then slightly ahead of me, but for some reason he went really wide, and then I shockwave, touched him, didn't knock him down, then came in first, barely. That's definitely one of the best races I had in this car, especially with a wreck against a bunch of high-end B-class cars in a D-class car. Now, let us see how we'll do on Osaka against a Corvette, an Apollo N, a Maserati Alfieri, and a Ferrari F12 TDF, who annoyingly drifted at the beginning and went up the ramp low, causing me to not be able to go up the ramp, and then proceeding to be annoying all through the beginning of the race. But thankfully, I was able to avoid getting knocked down through that and still make it onto the route that I wanted to take in 1st place, so that's fine. The car catching up behind me right now is actually a Corvette, and here we will see something interesting. So generally speaking, going straight here is a faster route than going to the right. However, a lot of people do end up going to the right because they don't have to deal with the really hairpin turn that we have right here. The way you take it is to drift around it as close to the inside as you can, and if you have poor nitro efficiency, then you may want to wait a little bit. But what's really interesting here is that he managed to get ahead even going to the right. Well, that's because he's a faster car and just a better car in general, that Corvette is, than me. So naturally, even going a slower route, he managed to get ahead when he was behind before. And then he proceeded to get further and further ahead. And I realized around that turn back there, I tend to do perfect nitro a bit late, and then I slow down a lot of miles per hour. So since I've noticed that in my recordings, I've learned to do it earlier, and so that's one nice thing about doing the voiceover on these races. I'm watching the races as I'm doing the voiceover, of course, so I can see better than when I'm doing the race those things that I may not be doing as well, and then I can improve upon them. This race is on City by the Bay against a couple of Asterions, an Apollo N, an SLR McLaren, and an F12 TDF. Now, this is not exactly one of my favorite tracks for multiplayer, and somehow I managed to knock down that Apollo N. Then somebody bumped me from behind to get me a bit of a speed boost, and I ended up getting through it pretty well after all. But more often than not, it's just a mosh pit at the beginning of this variant, and it just does not go all that well for me. So there, he went up high on that ramp, so I decided to go low so I wouldn't risk getting knocked down in the air, which has happened even when I hit somebody from behind in the air, and there I accidentally knock him down, then go off the ramp weird. This was just a pretty weird race in general, but it was a close one too, and I knew that if I was going to win it, I would have to do really well, and then somebody else wrecked, and then this person passes me, but then I pass him, and then he shockwaves, thankfully doesn't knock me down, then I shockwave. I told you it was crazy, but thankfully he doesn't land on me. He is a bit behind at this point as well, and so I go up these ramps, but I knew that he was faster. Everybody in this race is faster than me. So he caught up, but went a little bit of a different way. Then I landed in 1st place still, but then F12 TDF passed me, went right through me, and then got 1st place. I think he had a bad connection, but that was still a little weird. Now for our final race, in which we are facing a Corvette Grand Sport, as well as 3 Asterions, and in which I will give my general review about this car. It's a worthwhile car to pick up for multiple reasons, first of which is getting the Rimac. This car is basically essential, and it costs just 1,500 tokens pretty much to get the relay packs in order to 3-star this one. If you're planning to complete the Rimac event, as in getting the Rimac, again, wait until afterwards to 4-star this car. However, if you're not planning to get the Rimac and just want to get the cars that you can out of it, this is definitely one of the best ones to star up. Because the other 3 cars in the event, the Corvette ZR1, Italdesign Zero Uno, and Ford Shelby GR1, are all decent cars and pretty high in their classes except for the Italdesign, but none of them are kings like this one is. Its acceleration is definitely its strongest point, with its top speed being quite good for D-Class as well, and its drifting and nitro efficiency being rather mediocre. But if you're able to get ahead in the beginning because of this good acceleration in multiplayer, you will be able to do pretty well if you know how to drive it, and it is capable of getting top 1% in pretty much all weekly championships that I'm aware of. I do wonder how it will do on the Caribbean one against the Ginetta. That will also be a quite interesting competition. We take the victory in this final race. Thank you all for watching. Please like the video if you have enjoyed it, and consider subscribing for more Asphalt and other games content, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!